Hey there, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another one-man review. Today I've got Dementia 21 from the Japanese artist Shintaro Kago. This is another one of the books that I picked up in the Fantagraphics Fantabucks sale where I pre-ordered everything that I wanted from Fantagraphics for the rest of the year and then bought books that I've been wanting and books like this that were on their website that I didn't know what it was, but it looked cool. This book especially looked interesting to me because I've seen some of Shintaro Kago's like illustration work on Instagram, I believe, and thought that they looked like an interesting artist, but it only looked like illustration. So very happy to find out that Shintaro Kago has done a bunch of comics, and even more excited that some of them are translated and I be able to get a hold of it now. Really like the design on the books. They're like this hard soft cover thing that I've pointed out in some other videos that I like. Really lovely colors, cool use of the fonts, and then on the back there's like this spot gloss printed on there, but it gives it like a zippy texture on both of them. So really enjoying that aspect of it. The work itself, I like the art in it for the most part. There's some really awesome images, and then there's other stuff, especially as it goes on, that's not as great. The premise is that there's this young girl, Yuki Sakai, who becomes a elder care helper. So she goes in and takes care of different elderly people. And that sets up a bunch of short stories. At first, I was expecting some kind of ongoing story. And so I got a couple chapters in and realized, okay, this is short stories and I'm not enjoying myself anymore. So what I need to do, and this was the first book I did this on, and now I'm doing it on pretty much any book like this that I read, is this is meant to happen in chunks. I'm meant to read this in chunks. Looks like someone bled on my page here, which is pretty gross considering that image. I don't know. Well, I'll call it a watermark. But yeah, something like this that's a bunch of short stories. I realize I need to read one and then go read something else or read one a day. So I've been kind of slowly working my way through this book since I got all the Fantagraphics books, and I've pretty much done reading everything else, and I'm just finishing this up. I think that is going to be how I approach all short story books from now on, because I definitely tend to dismiss things, and stuff like this is not meant to be read. It's not one story that goes all the way through, and it's just unfair to the artist to go into all these little segments and then judge it as a totality where you're like, oh, I'm getting bored, they're not really saying anything. So I found that to be a good reading strategy, something that I wish I had done before, and it increased my enjoyment of this book quite a bit. You can see that Shintaro Kago's art, can be very intensely detailed, really nice, cool, and psychedelic. But yeah, each one of these just turns into like a different premise that deals with usually bureaucracy around dealing with the elderly, or just like straight up horror stories about the elderly. At his best, Kago gets like these really wild, spinny, psychedelic type of illustrations. At his worst, it's like pretty boring, just like straight on panels. There's more of that in the later volume that I'll show. The other thing that I'm not so stoked about with his work is that it's obviously done with computer tones instead of actual dot tones. Maybe that's just bias because I've seen so much manga with the dot tones, but there's like the gradients and stuff I don't know, it just doesn't work for me as well as like solid tones would. Or you just take away some of the like pleasure of the inventiveness of people using tones. Like this weird swirly texture back here looks so much more, or like the skies, they look so much more just like someone doing something in Photoshop. They don't look manipulated or nuanced at all. Versus, say, Kentaro Miura's, where he's doing the sky and it's like 2 or 3 layers of tone, and you can see the inventiveness of having to go in and scratch all that out. So, it just feels a little bit more dead to me. So I don't. I mean, I'd recommend the book. It's a fun book. It's really cool art. I don't want to give away what all the stories are, but I'll point out some of my favorite concepts that were in the book. This one, she's taking care of like a elderly kaiju fighter, so a giant man, and that presents its own interesting problems. This one, she's like finding herself in a comic book, which is, everyone has to do that when you're doing it. It's like the musical episode of ongoing Monster of the Month show. So this character finds himself trapped in a comic, and she has to kind of manipulate the stories to win that battle. This one I found to be a really funny idea from a bureaucratic standpoint, is that the government has tried to simplify driving, and so they'll make these roads that are like for very specific uses only. So the hearses only road, the VIP road, the moving truck road, the toxic waste truck road, and there's like an elderly road, that the elderlies are supposed to go on, drunk drivers only road. This is a good example of Shintaro Kago kind of at his worst, coming almost this like clip art feeling on the cars, and nothing really interesting or dynamic going on with the panels. When you get to these more pile-up situations, then it gets interesting again. So I really like those more bureaucratic nightmare ones rather than the straight-up like horror ones. I think those are my favorite. Also worth noting that they have a lot of these color illustrations, which is really where I think like this Shintaro Kago shines. This is the type of stuff I've seen on Instagram with like heads and teeth peeling and these kind of weird geometrical things. So when that shows up in the art, he's very successful. There's also a very fun interview between Shintaro Kago and Gary Groth, where Gary Groth is trying to get information out of him, but he's not very forthcoming. Apparently doesn't like to be interviewed. Volume 2 is pretty much the same thing. Obviously, it's just a bunch of short stories. This one I thought was pretty funny. It's trying to get people to not see elderly criminals. So you're strapped into this machine that as soon as it senses elderly criminals, it will make you look the other way. And it's pretty obvious immediately that having this contraption on your back is dangerous, and that's going to go wrong. In this volume, you'll see the use of the computers kind of kicks in even more with the art, with these types of backgrounds. The art itself starts to feel a little bit more stiff. I don't know if he moved to drawing on a computer or it's just a stylistic thing, if he's getting bored with the series, but like that kind of stuff's just not as interesting to me. The gradients and stuff, I don't know what it is about that, but like a panel like this looks better to me where it's just one flat tone. So, not, I don't know. I guess I'm just a fan of the dot tones. I don't know why. Or like this even just looks like they manipulated a photograph and then drew on top of it because it's got all the textures. So there's kind of like a cheapness and quickness to this later material that I wasn't so excited about. The stories are still funny though. Like this one is Santa has dementia, and this kid's wishing for a brother, so he immediately tries to sexually assault the mother to oh, I wish I would die. I wish I could kill that bully. He's just fulfilling all these wishes, bad wishes and wrong wishes. So that was a funny one. This one, they're training the elderly to have stronger teeth and throat muscles so they don't choke on their food, which I turned 40 and all of a sudden started having problems with my esophagus. So this one definitely hit home and made me a little bit sad, where they're in there. They're like stuffing this thing down their throat to hold on to, and then they have to clench it while they spin them. I feel like maybe I need to do that exercise. So that made me go, oh Lord, I'm going into the elderly. I'm not just old, I'm elderly. And then this one here is a comic about Shintaro Kago being poor and having trouble making his comic, but it doesn't fall into one of those, oh, woe is me, let's make a story. You can basically tell that he's done with the strip and he's trying to close it out. And so he goes into the politics of like trying to make money off of his more outsider art type of comics that don't fit into the mold. And he's working with someone who said, "Hey, we're gonna make a movie out of this book," and so, oh, really? Great, let's make all kinds of money. And you see them going through the process of like, you need bigger eyes, a cuter outfit, and I liked seeing that. Like that was a fun way to do one of those artist stories. And then from there, you get the final 3 or 4 stories are actually all one continuous story, which is the first time, and it references back to many other stories. So I thought that was fun. But basically, the main character Yuki loses her job and goes to war with the elderly, and there's not terribly much to spoil, but I won't spoil anything else. But it ends that way, with a lot of characters from previous stories coming back and playing a role. So you can tell he had fun, but you could also see him getting frustrated, I think, by the end and being over the project. So it tapered off for me at the end, but I did find the last bit about the industry politics being kind of interesting. So it's a really unique, interesting manga series, really cool art. It suggests a lot of other possibilities. I'm definitely curious seeing more of Shintaro Kago's work. I don't know if he's done anything long form, but of course I'd love to see that. Once you've got these books, if you haven't already, make sure you check out the Eisner-nominated The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. This is a collaboration between myself and Dave Sim, published by Sean through Living the Lines. And once you've got this, keep an eye out for Yuichi Yokoyama's Plaza if you want an even more extreme version of the future of manga and what manga could be. Look for Plaza by Yuichi Yokoyama, and then also Eric Creek's The Exile and Miel Van de Piet's Centralia. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jeff.